The taste of blood filled my mouth as I sprawled across the kitchen floor, vision swimming with stars. My father's knuckles had connected with such force that the room seemed to tilt sideways. I could feel my jaw shifting unnaturally as I tried to speak, my tongue probing a loosened tooth. Through the ringing in my ears, I heard not concern, not shock, but laughter. My mother's cold, brittle laugh that scraped against my skin like broken glass. "That's what you get for being worthless," she said, stepping over me as if I were nothing more than a spilled drink. "Maybe now you'll learn your place." All I'd done was ask why my brother Owen wasn't helping with yard work. 5 words. Why can't he do anything? Apparently that warranted having my face rearranged. "My name is Julia. I'm 26 and a daughter who became invisible in my own home." This is the story of how I turned their perfect family portrait into evidence. Owen, of course, watched from the doorway with that familiar smirk stretching across his face. At 24, he hadn't held a job in years, yet somehow remained the golden child, the future of our bloodline, as Dad called him. I called him what he was, a parasite feeding off our parents' worship. "Get up!" my father bellowed, towering over me with fists still clenched. "Or do you need another lesson?" I struggled to my feet, the metallic taste of blood coating my tongue. Each movement sent lightning through my jaw. When I tried to speak, the words came muffled, distorted by swelling. "I'm fine," I managed, though it was anything but true. "You'll be fine when you stop running your mouth," he growled. "Worthless people don't get to complain." Mom poured herself coffee, humming as though the smell of blood in her kitchen was just another mundane morning scent. "Make sure you finish the backyard before lunch," she said without looking at me. "And clean yourself up. I don't want neighbors thinking we're savages." The irony almost made me laugh. A woman who watched her husband shatter her daughter's jaw, worried about appearing savage to neighbors. But I knew better than to find humor in this house. Even a smile could trigger another explosion. Outside, the humid air pressed against my skin like a weight. I gripped the broom handle so tightly, my knuckles whitened. Not because the yard needed cleaning, but because without that anchor, my hands wouldn't stop trembling. Blood still coated my teeth, my jaw throbbing with each heartbeat. Through the living room window, I could see Owen sprawled on the couch, television light flickering across his face. That smirk. I'd seen it since childhood, the silent, "You'll never be more than this," that had become the background radiation of my existence. I should have left years ago, but every attempt had been methodically dismantled. My savings had mysteriously disappeared into Owen's latest business venture after Dad accessed my account with the information I was forced to provide when I turned 18. My job hours had been cut after Dad happened to golf with my manager, casually mentioning how I was needed at home for family obligations. My car broke down before interviews because Owen had tampered with the engine, a skill he'd learned from his mechanic friend, ironically one of the few useful things he'd ever picked up. My phone charger vanished when I needed to make important calls, always turning up later in Owen's room when it was too late. "Maybe it's a sign you're not ready for the world," Mom always said with that thin smile. But that punch, the one that rattled my teeth and sent stars across my vision, it didn't feel like a sign to stay. It felt like the final page of a chapter I never should have allowed to continue. By nightfall, my jaw had swollen to twice its size. In the bathroom mirror, I pressed a cold spoon against the purple-blue mass, studying the stranger reflected back at me. Split lip, bruised eye. I didn't look like someone who could fight back. I looked like someone who'd already lost. But appearances can be deceiving. That night, while they argued over takeout options in the living room, I sat on my bed and began to plan. My face throbbed, but my thoughts were crystallizing into something sharp and precise. This time, I wouldn't wait for them to break something else. This time, I would ensure they learned what real damage felt like. And when it happened, they'd never see it coming. By morning, the swelling had hardened into an ache that radiated from my jaw to my temple. I could barely chew the dry toast I forced down just to keep my stomach from eating itself. Every movement brought back the sound of bone meeting bone, my father's lesson echoing in my skull. But that ache had company now, a quiet razor-edged thought pulsing in my chest each time I heard their voices. When I entered the kitchen, Dad was already there, sipping coffee as if he hadn't shattered my face 12 hours earlier. Mom stood at the stove humming while flipping pancakes, the special kind she never made for me, only for Owen. He sat at the table, hair disheveled, grinning lazily as syrup dripped from his fork. "Don't just stand there," Mom said without turning. "You can pour juice for your brother." My jaw screamed when I clenched it, but I poured anyway, sliding the glass toward him without meeting his eyes. He didn't say thanks. He never did. Instead, he tilted his head, that familiar smirk playing across his lips. "Still talking funny," he said, mimicking my stiffened jaw. "Guess Dad really knocked some sense into you." Dad chuckled without looking up from his phone. "She's lucky I didn't break more than her mouth." I froze, juice container still in hand, as something crystallized inside me. This wasn't just cruelty. This was their normal. And if I stayed much longer, it would become mine too. That night, when the house had fallen silent, I unlocked the old cedar chest hidden in my closet. Buried beneath musty blankets were 3 things they'd forgotten existed: my high school laptop with a cracked corner, a set of spare house keys, and a spiral notebook with a faded cover. The laptop was slow, its screen flickering, but it worked well enough for what I needed. I began writing. Not a diary, not a confession, but a blueprint. Not just for leaving, but for taking something with me they could never replace. The first step wasn't confrontation. It wasn't telling them off or fighting back. It was invisibility. For the next few days, I became so obedient, it was almost boring. I cleaned without complaint, ate in silence, even laughed at Owen's pathetic jokes. I kept my eyes down when Dad spoke, never asked questions, never talked back. And it worked. They stopped seeing me as a threat. They stopped seeing me at all. But while they relaxed, I paid attention to details most would overlook, where Dad kept his important papers in the desk drawer, the times Mom left her phone unattended while gossiping in the backyard, the way Owen bragged about things he shouldn't, passwords and bank details he thought made him sound important. One evening, Mom left her handbag on the counter while watering her plants. I stood there, dish towel in hand, pretending to dry a plate until I heard the sliding door click shut. In less than 30 seconds, I had her phone in my hand, thumb swiping through photo galleries, saved emails and notes where she kept passwords like grocery lists. My heart hammered against my ribs, but I didn't keep any of it. Not yet. I memorized patterns, email addresses, connections. This wasn't just about collecting dirt. It was about understanding how they moved through the world. The more I learned, the more my plan evolved. Leaving them in ruins wasn't enough. I wanted them to feel exposed, vulnerable, small, exactly as they'd made me feel for 26 years. 2 weeks later, Owen came home bragging to Mom about finally making it big. He'd invested Dad's networking funds in some scheme with his friend Marcus. I pretended not to listen, but I caught enough. A launch event, a rented venue, Dad's business associates invited to witness Owen's genius. That was my window. For the next few days, I lived in 2 worlds. By day, I was the silent, obedient daughter who never looked them in the eye. By night, I was piecing together a plan to step into Owen's spotlight just long enough to tear their entire facade apart. I didn't want to hurt them physically, not like they'd hurt me. I wanted to hit where it would bleed the longest: their pride, their credibility, their sense of being untouchable. One night, as I sat at my desk with my notebook open, the bruise on my jaw fading to a dull yellow, I realized something profound. I wasn't just planning to leave. I was planning to erase the version of me they thought they owned. And when I was done, they wouldn't just lose me. They'd lose everything they'd built on my silence. The night of Owen's big debut arrived 3 weeks after my father's attack, just enough time for my bruises to fade and my planning to solidify. The hall was lit like a movie premiere. Gold lights draped across the rented hall, champagne flowing into tall glasses, every man wearing a suit just tight enough to show he'd spent more on tailoring than morals. I slipped in early, unnoticed, dressed in black that didn't beg for attention but commanded it if you looked twice. My hair was pinned up, makeup sharp enough to slice through air. I didn't look like their worthless daughter anymore. I looked like someone they'd pretend to know if they wanted something. I had spent the day before using Dad's own computer while he was golfing, copying files from his business folders. That morning, I'd accessed the venue's event schedule online, using information Owen had carelessly left visible on his laptop screen. I arrived 2 hours before the event, using the service entrance I'd identified during my research, and introduced myself to the AV technician as Owen's assistant. Something he didn't have but would never deny if mentioned. Owen was already playing host, shaking hands like he'd been born to it. Dad hovered behind him, chest puffed out as if Owen's success was his personal achievement. Mom, in a glittering dress, floated from conversation to conversation, dropping hints about how hard Owen worked while conveniently omitting where the funding came from. They didn't see me at first, I made sure of that. I stayed near the bar, listening, watching. The projector at the front looped Owen's logo and staged photos of him working. When the speeches began, Dad took the microphone first. "My son," he boomed, "is proof that hard work, discipline, and the right guidance will always pay off." That word, discipline. It made my jaw twitch involuntarily, but I smiled through it. Then Owen launched into his pitch, pretending humility while bragging about his original concept and innovative approach. I let him talk, let him stack his tower higher and higher because I was about to knock it down. At the exact moment Owen clicked for the video presentation, I stepped toward the AV table and slid the small USB drive I'd been guarding for weeks into an empty port. It took less than 3 seconds for my files to override his. The screen flickered. Instead of sleek promotional footage, the first image that appeared was Dad's handwritten ledger, the one listing unofficial payments to expedite business deals. Then came a scan of Mom's private messages to a woman she owed money to, calling her a desperate beggar. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Next, a video clip. Dad slamming his fist into the wall, yelling, "You're nothing without me," his voice crystal clear. I had recorded this months ago on my phone during one of his rages, never knowing then exactly how I would use it. Then another. Owen mocking a disabled coworker in a parking lot. This video had been sent to me by his former colleague who had also suffered from Owen's cruelty. I'd reached out to her through social media after overhearing Owen mention her name in one of his boastful stories. The room fell silent. Someone in the back muttered, "Period." "Is this real?" And another voice answered, "That's his voice." I didn't look at them. Not yet. I wanted them to feel it before they saw me. The final slide was a simple text file with one line. Funded by stolen money meant for a blind child's medical treatment. That was when the noise hit. Sharp, collective, scandalized. Chairs scraped back. Voices rose. People began pulling out their phones. I walked toward the front then, slow and steady. The way you walk when you've already won. Owen's face was bloodless, his mouth opening and closing like he'd forgotten how to breathe. Mom's hands clutched her purse like it could somehow save her. Dad. Dad was staring straight at me now, and for the first time in my life, I saw fear in his eyes. "You," he hissed. "Me," I said, my voice calm. My jaw didn't ache anymore. The worthless one, the one who doesn't talk back. People were filming now, not for my benefit, but to keep the story alive long after tonight ended. I leaned in just enough so they'd hear me over the chaos. "You built this family name on cruelty. I just returned it to you without the polish." Then I turned and walked out into the cool night air, my steps light, the weight in my chest finally gone. I had already packed my essentials that morning and hidden them in a locker at the bus station across town. My new phone, purchased with cash I'd slowly saved from grocery money they thought I was spending, was in my pocket, and a prepaid ticket to start my life 3 states away was waiting for me. Behind me, I could still hear their voices, panicked, desperate, as their empire cracked in front of every single person whose opinion they'd ever valued. And I didn't need to look back to know their faces were as pale as the truth I'd just exposed. Some people say revenge doesn't heal wounds. Maybe they're right. But as I walked away from that hall, from that family, from years of being invisible, I didn't need healing. I needed justice. And sometimes, justice comes with a spotlight. 6 months later, I'm living in an apartment with a roommate I met through an online housing board. Dad's business collapsed after 3 major clients pulled out following the scandal. Owen's business venture was investigated for fraud, and he's facing charges that could mean actual consequences for once. Mom tried calling me once from a number I didn't recognize, but I hung up as soon as I heard her voice. I blocked her number immediately after, ensuring she couldn't reach me again. I've legally changed my name through an attorney who specializes in helping abuse survivors, found a job at a marketing firm, and started therapy to process 26 years of being made to feel worthless. The blind child mentioned in my presentation was Owen's former colleague's nephew. I made sure to anonymously donate part of my first 3 paychecks to his medical fund. It wasn't much, but it was something honest toward healing the damage my family had caused. I never planned to see or speak to any of them again. Some family ties aren't meant to be repaired. They're meant to be severed completely. The divorce papers Dad received from Mom a month after the scandal confirmed that their perfect family portrait had finally shattered for good. Before you go, here's a quick bonus for sticking around. If you love learning and growing like I do, you need to try audiobooks. I've got an exclusive deal with Audible. Your first month is completely free. That's access to over 500,000 titles, 0 cost to you. All the details are waiting in the description. Don't miss this one.